From WFRV Local 5, your local election headquarters. This is Newsmaker Sunday.
Good morning. Welcome to Newsmaker Sunday. I'm Tom Zalaski. With the resignation of Congressman Mike Gallagher, Wisconsin's 8th congressional district seat is now open. There are 4 announced candidates for the job. On the Republican side, State Senator Andre Jacques, former state senator and former candidate for Lieutenant Governor Roger Roth, and Green Bay businessman Tony Weed. On the Democratic side, the sole candidate is Dr. Kristen Lyerly. Now, Newsmaker Sunday has extended an invitation to all 4 candidates to appear on the program. And joining us this morning, one of the aforementioned Republican candidates, State Senator Andre Jacques. Good to have you, Senator. Always nice to have you back on the program.
Good morning. It's great to be back on the program, Tom.
You have been our guest in the past, and for those who either do not know you or have not heard you speak on a national scale going for a congressional office, your political resume, where have you been, what have you done?
Sure. So since 2018, I've represented the 1st Senate District, which is kind of the eastern half of the 8th Congressional District, but was born in Wisconsin, raised here in northeast Wisconsin, went to Green Bay Southwest High School, and have worked in economic development in and out of government, was elected to the State Assembly for 4 terms as well. Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
Before we get into all the nuts and bolts, your perspective of how we got here. You're running to take the seat of former Congressman Mike Gallagher, who announced in February he would not seek a 5th term. And when asked why, he said electoral politics was not something that was supposed to be a career. And yet he said he was leaving with a heavy heart. Why do you think he resigned? Why do you think he did not go for that 5th term?
Yeah, I mean, I think clearly Washington is broken. Clearly there are a lot of problems to fix there. That's really one of the things that I focused in Madison, is standing up to the establishment power brokers and special interests to get common sense things done for the people that I represent. And obviously at the federal level, we have a lot of issues that unfortunately we can only treat the symptoms of here at the state level. So I think there's clearly some frustration. I don't agree with the timing in terms of when he left the office, but certainly he saw some opportunities outside of government service that he wanted to take advantage of. But for me, I think it's just incredibly important that we have somebody in the role of 8th District Congressman to represent Northeast Wisconsin. I mean, I'm incredibly proud to live here and raise a family with my wife in the De Pere area, and you know, it's just a great opportunity to address some of those critical issues that really affect our safety and security here in our home, as well as our family budgets and everything else.
You say you didn't agree with Gallagher's timing. It was enough of a shock in the first place when he said that he would not be running for the 5th term. And then came the announcement a month and a half later that he was resigning. Did that surprise you? And did that leave the party in somewhat of a lurch, not having that seat filled?
Yeah, I mean, I think clearly with a razor-thin majority at the federal level, it really did put the Republican Party in a spot. I think, but on top of that, you know, it was certainly a surprise, both announcements that he made. First that he was leaving, then that he was leaving early. And other people might have gotten a little bit of a heads up on one or the other account. Quite frankly, it was a surprise, and something that, you know, immediately I had people urging me to consider running, so that we had a good, strong conservative in the race. Certainly it was something that, you know, had discussions with my family to see if now could be the right time. Sure. But yeah, it was a shock. All
right, enough Gallagher, more on Andre Jacques. Your political past, your past accomplishments, what about those things makes you feel that you are a fit for the United States Congress?
Well, I think when you look at my background, I'm somebody that puts in the work, and on countless issues over the years, I've gotten things to the finish line, and those have been bipartisan achievements, they've been conservative achievements, they've been things focused on public safety and victims' rights, healthcare, education, the environment, really all across the political spectrum. But I'm also somebody that has suffered the slings and arrows of battles with party bosses, and I've done it, you know, not for my own political benefit, but for the people back here at home. And I know you and some of the media have been very helpful when I have ruffled some feathers with some folks down in Madison to get some things across the finish line that, again, aren't even necessarily that political or partisan as much as they are needed reforms to the way that we live our lives, and making sure that there's a better Wisconsin for all of us. And I'm just incredibly proud of the battles I fought side by side with so many people in doing.
So you've had this essentially secure job down there in Madison as a state senator. What was the trigger that made you say, I'm going to run for Congress?
Again, I really think that it was the realization that you have to not just have somebody who's going to tell you the things you want to hear at election time. You want somebody who's going to deliver and get things done. And again, when you look at the set of issues that we haven't been able to make real progress with at the state level because the source is at the federal level where things are really getting messed up, whether that's on caring for our veterans, whether that is border security and the safety of our streets, whether that's Bidenflation and everything that we're dealing with our household budgets. Those are all very serious issues that we need to tackle at the federal level. And it was, again, a lot of encouragement to run. Certainly, when my wife said that she thought that I should run, that really kind of sealed the deal for me. So, I also did happen to get drawn out of my district through redistricting, but very, very proud to represent the people in Northeast Wisconsin, at least as long as the state Supreme Court lets me.
So your decision, this has to be life-changing for you, because obviously you didn't expect, nor did anybody expect, that this seat was going to be open.
Well, certainly Congressman Gallagher had made a public statement that he was not going to be running for Congress last year, and that he was going to be running for re-election to Congress. Yeah. That it was something that obviously chairing the Select Committee on China, that was something that he was going to continue doing, and I had no reason to think otherwise. So it was certainly unexpected. So
when he made that announcement, how many minutes, how many seconds did it take Senator Andre Jacques to go Congress time?
It actually took a matter of weeks before.
Really?
It really, again, this is not something that I need to do for myself, but it is something that is very important for the future of our state, for the future of our nation. Certainly, as I look at my family and I look at the community that I serve, it really is important that we have somebody with a strong, proven conservative record that represents what I think is a conservative electorate. And we did not have that in that race. I think I still am the only candidate, clearly in this race against Dr. Lyerly, who is shown to be extremely liberal. And I think it's very important that you have somebody who's willing to make those contrasts and work really hard for the people.
Our guest this morning, State Senator Andre Jacques, now running for the United States Congress. We have much more to come right after this, so please stay with us. Back now with congressional candidate Andre Jacques running for Wisconsin's 8th district seat. So we've got a seat up for grabs in Congress, election coming up in November. Let me ask you some of the highlights of your particular platform. Your campaign website headline is Common Sense Conservative Values. What do you mean by that slogan?
Well, I think I'm kind of more your average guy. I mean, I'm not the candidate with the best hair or the biggest bank account, but I am somebody where if you look at my record, I am going to stand up for areas where government is getting in the way of doing the right thing. So whether that's something that's saving lives like Dylan's Law or Ethan's Law, where we're not putting children in harm's way, or just whether it's getting bureaucracy away from running amok and any number of regulatory reforms, things that just have government get out of the way of people living their lives. And conservative values, that's just something that I've always stood for. I'm very, very proud of my pro-life record, very proud of standing up for families in a whole host of circumstances, and that's something that I'm obviously going to continue to do wherever I'm at.
Some of the issues you have listed, let's start first, something you will have to deal with as a congressman, securing the border. The border is not secure. I think we can all agree with that. Trump had 4 years. He didn't get that wall built, didn't get it paid for by Mexico. Joe Biden allowing thousands to get in. But we go back to Obama and Bush and Bush. The border was still open. Why is it still open? It seems every administration has turned a blind eye to this problem.
Well, and it's been a bipartisan failure because Republicans have not taken the opportunity when they have had the opportunity to do something about it, because they are the party that I think in their platform has pledged to do something about it. And during the Trump administration, unfortunately, Congress did not hold up its end of the bargain in terms of making sure that the wall was built. Obviously, Biden bears a lot of culpability for what he did to basically stall the progress that had been made on building the wall. But when you look at really the invitation for people of ill will to cross the borders, handing operational control to Mexican cartels and really unvetted individuals from every country around the globe to stream across our border, and just the safety and homeland security threat. I mean, it's an existential threat to our country when you have that going on, and especially when you talk about fentanyl or human trafficking. Drug trafficking, human trafficking, two of the areas I've worked a lot in the legislature. Very proud to already have the sole endorsement from the Wisconsin Professional Police Association in this race, three-time Legislator of the Year. And when I talk to those folks on the front lines in our communities dealing with criminal illegals that are repeatedly committing crimes and causing chaos in our communities, and where are they coming from? And certainly we see what's happened down on the border. It's critical that we get a handle on that situation. And I think it's just important that we give them the tools. But yeah, I mean, it is something that is just one more example of what I said before, which is that you can't just elect people with an R after their name and think that they're somehow going to act like conservatives in office. You have to have people who are willing to stand fast and actually be held accountable for what they pledge to do.
So regardless of what president you serve under, could be Biden, could be Trump, if you were to talk to that president, Mr. President, here's how you solve the border issue.
Sure. Yeah, I think clearly you have to restore what was already done previously under executive order, follow the existing laws that we have on the books, remove basically the sweeteners, the efforts that have been made to offer benefits and inducements to illegal aliens, and the things that unfortunately have tied the hands of law enforcement as they're trying to prosecute the cartels, the traffickers, whether that's drugs or sex trafficking. It's just absolutely critical that we don't have an administration that stands in the way of law enforcement being able to have a safe and secure border.
Another one of your issues, you highlight constitutional rights. Do you see them under attack? If so, how so?
Absolutely. I mean, I think if you look at what has been proposed in regards to Second Amendment and curtailing people's right to keep and bear arms, to feel safe in their homes and their community, but also going back to what we saw happen during the pandemic, where there were, I think, a lot of violations of people's basic constitutional rights. I was very proud to stand up for people in putting those bills to the governor, which he vetoed, but I think it's really important that we protect people's First Amendment rights, all of people's rights, and yeah.
Third issue, big issue you have on your website, the Biden economy. And I know this is an easy one for you, but first, what would you say is the most not right thing about it?
Yeah, and I think when we look at the inflation, which really is stealing people's wages, it's keeping people from the American dream and being able to get ahead, and all the disruptions that it's caused in the economy. I mean, the way that the money supply has been handled, I mean, just the idea that we would potentially start minting trillion-dollar coins every 100 days in order to keep up with the national debt ceiling. It's just ludicrous how far we have expanded the federal bureaucracy, and I just think it's absolutely critical that we get a hold on our spending situation. I think that is one of the failures of Republicans. Again, when they have had control, they have not actually cut spending. They've simply limited the increases to less than what the Democrats are willing to do. And that's really one of the things I really focused on in my time in the legislature, not just guidance documents and stopping, sue, and settle, but really looking to have the state legislature be able to provide some oversight of federal funding, to be able to provide tax relief, to be able to make sure that we were paying down our debt within capital projects as opposed to just spending money and expanding government. And that is a difference between myself and Senator Roth, who was also in office at the time, in terms of philosophy there.
We have much more to come with André Jacques, so please stay right there. Back now with congressional candidate André Jacques, when we do a lightning round with you for some of the major issues that you will be dealing with as a United States congressman. Abortion, yes, no, to what degree, any exceptions? Very
proud of my pro-life record. Sole endorsed candidate for Pro-Life Wisconsin, responsible for eliminating many taxpayer subsidies of elective abortion.
Okay. Any exceptions?
I don't believe in discriminating against any child on the basis of their conception.
Okay. Not rape, not incest, just no abortion at all.
Correct.
Okay. Okay. Our dealings with the Hamas-Israel conflict, is there a right side in this, a wrong side in this? Are we handling this the way it should be handled?
Well, certainly if you look at the protests here locally, or at least in the state of Wisconsin, I've actually had a number of communications with the UW system just in terms of the rights of Jewish students being violated. Mm-hmm. When you look at Hamas, they are an existential threat to the state of Israel. They are sworn to basically eliminate the Jewish state. And I think, when you look at the fact that hostages are still being held, including American citizens, when you look at just the breadth of the villainy that took place on October 7th, I think it's critical that we stand with really our only dependable ally in the region.
Ukraine. Are we on the right side there? Are we doing enough for Ukraine?
Well, I think that the U.S. has certainly provided a lot of support to Ukraine. I think a lot of the problems that we have is making sure that money is spent appropriately. And that's really one of the reasons why I do believe that before sending additional money to Ukraine, we need to see the international community step up. So that has been one of the concerns that I've shared with a number of Republicans in Congress, which is that we should not just be letting our hearts be reflected in a blank checkbook when it's not helping the overall situation.
Where do you stand on term limits for congressmen?
I was actually the first candidate to sign the U.S. term limits pledge to limit myself to supporting a constitutional amendment to limit terms for Congress.
And finally, something you mentioned, that this is a statewide issue, something you mentioned that your life was changed with redistricting. How did that go for you? Were you happy with that? Were you against what happened? How did you see that?
Yeah, I was very disturbed in terms of the purely political gerrymandering that we did see in the governor's maps verbatim being adopted. I voted against that when it came through the legislature because I do believe that was done purely for partisan advantage, and I think if a court would have judged what was going on at the state level, they clearly would have overruled what was going on.
We are back to wrap up with André Jacques, congressional candidate, so please stay with us. Back now with State Senator André Jacques, who is looking to fill the congressional seat vacated by Mike Gallagher. I take it come November, you are expecting the House to be maintained by the Republicans. Why do you think that? What leads you to believe that?
Well, I think if you just look at the slate of issues that people are going to be deciding on this fall, they all tilt very clearly to the Republican Party. I think when you look at the chaos at the border, the chaos in our economy, and really just throughout the issue spectrum, I think it's very clear that Republicans should be on offense this fall.
I know I'm asking you to be a prognosticator here. What about the U.S. Senate?
Well, I think for the same reasons that you're going to see the Senate flip as well. I mean, I think feel very strongly in the campaign that the Republican candidates are running against Tammy Baldwin, and I think that feel very, very good that we're going to be able to tilt that chamber, especially looking at the national map of who's up for re-election.
You've been in this political game for so long now, and you've seen just about everything. Have we reached the days where there's no more compromise, any more reaching across the aisle? It seems as though we've reached tribalism, where if it's your idea, it's not a good idea.
Well, I think outside of the view of cameras, there's a lot of bipartisanship that still goes on, and really should, on a whole host of issues. And I think, you've obviously been very involved in veterans issues as well. I can tell you that's one of the areas that I'm very proud of my work, Legislator of the Year for American Legion, VFW, and that's one area that there obviously are a lot of Democrats willing to work across the aisle as well, and in terms of reforming, how do we make sure that we're properly delivering services to those that have written that blank check for their freedom, for our freedom. I think on some public safety issues as well, that's also the case. There are also a lot of issues that aren't necessarily political, but obviously the areas where there are the starkest contrasts between the parties, yes, there's going to have to be disagreements. And
all right, Andre Jacques, so good to see you again. Andre Jacques running for United States Congress in the seat vacated by Mike Gallagher. Good to have you this morning.
Always a pleasure, Tom.
Thanks so much. And if you have a newsmaker in your town who you think we should have on this show, let us know about it. Send us an email to tips@wearegreenbay.com, or you can message us on Facebook. And be sure to join us once again Sunday morning at 7:30. Until then, have a great day.